So tell us about the move to Puerto Rico. What
Sure.
spawned it? Most importantly for me, how did you talk your wife into it? And
Yeah.
tell us about the benefits of Puerto Rico.
So are you in the pre-contemplation stage? Like I'm thinking about it, but I'm not ready.
I,
Or are
I
you like, I can do this?
I'm in the for the foreseeable future due to my mortgage business. I need to be on the West Coast. But I know that there's some huge tax benefits to living in Puerto Rico, and my wife and I keep flirting with having a second home in Mexico, where her family is originally from, or
Yeah.
just having something kind of outside of the country, where Puerto Rico is kind of part of the country, but kind of outside of the country. So it's been a fleeting thought of mine for a couple years, for a couple years down the road, where it's like I'll
Okay.
get really into it and I'll do a bunch of research and I'll do a bunch of stuff online and I'll look at houses out there to buy, and then it'll be a fleeting thought and I won't think about it for 8 or 10 months. So that's kind of where
Okay.
I'm at. And by the way, talking my wife
Yeah.
into this would be a really hard sell. Like just buying a second home in Henderson, Nevada, which is a 4-hour drive back to her family's house in LA. That was a tough sell. So Puerto Rico is like somewhere down the line, future, maybe retirement. But I love dreaming about it.
Okay. Now I know where you're coming from, so maybe this could help. So, what got me into Puerto Rico was, this is going to sound terrible, but like some of it was taxes. Like I just was like, man, that's my biggest expense in life. So what can jumpstart me further is taxes. And I kind of brought it up with my wife briefly, and she was like, not only no, but hell no. Well, there was a Go Abundance trip in Puerto Rico, and I met a bunch of Go Bros, and I learned about the whole Act 60, which I realized I could qualify for, and I would have to do some things. My wife went down there, and she loves adventure, and she was like, "This is interesting, and it's not as bad as I thought." Puerto Rico, I feel like they say it's U.S. territory, but really it's like a developing country with U.S. branding. They don't get federal funding because they don't pay taxes. And so my wife went down there and she's like, this could be fun. We could do this for a bit. It doesn't, like, what's the worst thing? You go back home. Like that's maybe with kids, there's a lot more stuff, but for us, we didn't have that much stuff because when I was on my bike trip, we sold everything. So, we said this could, make us, between 250 and 300K easily a year in just taxes that's being averted. So that's enough for us to maybe save, because eventually we'd like to have a house in Bozeman, Montana. My favorite state was Bozeman in Idaho. And so it just lined up. How does Act 60 work? You have to provide a service to people in the United States, but you have to be in Puerto Rico doing it. So if you own a business, you have employees in Puerto Rico and they provide a service to the United States, you get all the tax benefits. You don't have to be there, but for 6 months a year. And so I want to buy a business one day and I want to own real estate, which, by the way, short-term rental or even long-term rental income there is tax-free. I wanted to buy a business, which could be tax-free. And I do radiology, which could be tax-free. So it was like, from my wealth standpoint, it made sense to even be there just for 3 years. Plus, I could brush up on my Spanish. I used to do patient interviews in Spanish.
And so can you
Yeah.
explain X60 for people that don't know what you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. If I'm ever like over anybody's head, just like stop me. But like Act 60 is the new acts, but it's like a combination of what used to be Acts 20 and 22, which was like the individual investor decree and like your income decree, of where, the misconception is you can't just go to Puerto Rico and be like, I'm not paying taxes. It doesn't work like that.
And
It's
we're talking about American federal taxes
and state taxes and all, and short-term and long-term capital gains taxes. So Act 60 combines everything where it's like your income is tax-free. If you buy Bitcoin and then sell it the next day and you make a gain, it's tax-free. All your capital gains are tax-free. There are limitations, like real estate I own in the United States on my rental properties are not exempt from that, but who gives a shit? Like I'm getting all this tax-free stuff from everywhere else. So Act 60 is what incorporates that. You apply for it in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico doesn't give two shits if you don't pay US taxes, because they don't either. It's Uncle Sam. So like you have to hire a company that can help you. Like I will be Puerto Rican in a month. Like I'm going to own a Puerto Rican bank account and have a Puerto Rico driver's license and have a Puerto Rico address as my primary home. And so if you do all those things, the government will still be watching you, but you're Puerto Rican. Like I'm doing everything I can to appear Puerto Rican. And like, there's really nothing that can be done to take this away, because it helps the economy. Like I'm going to hire Puerto Ricans to help like run a business if I buy one, or like help manage my short-term rentals.
So let me see if I get this correct. And these are not my exact numbers, but let's just say for academic purposes, let's say my mortgage business, which is in the United States, is spinning off $500,000 in revenue. And let's say my mortgage coaching business, which is in the United States, is spinning off $500,000. So if you make $1 million, the government's probably getting somewhere between, depending on the state you live in, somewhere between 20 and 35%. So I'm paying $250,000 or $300,000 a year in state and federal taxes to Uncle Sam on $1 million of income. If I move to Puerto Rico and I hire some local staffing, so maybe my virtual assistant becomes Puerto Rican instead of Filipino, and my executive assistant becomes Puerto Rican instead of Californian, and vice versa, or and so on and so on. I mean, not vice versa. As long as I'm hiring some local talent and putting money into the Puerto Rican economy, as long as I'm there 6 months or 6 months and 1 day or whatever, and as long as I keep my books straight and I do this all legally, then all of my income is federal and state tax free. So in this scenario, you basically give yourself a couple $100,000 pay raise by not having to legally pay Uncle Sam. Am I getting that right conceptually?
Yeah, mostly. So you don't have to hire people from Puerto Rico like me. Let's just make it really simple. I'm a radiologist. Let's say next year I'm going to make like 650,000. In my tax bracket, I'd be paying 40%. Now, if I was in California, like you, like I'd be paying a lot more in state taxes. But if I'm earning the income with my feet on the ground in Puerto Rico by myself, like let's say you have a coaching business and you're coaching people, all that income is tax free if you're in Puerto Rico doing it. If you go to the United States, yeah, you'd have to pay some federal income tax. But there's, like for me and my wife, like I don't mind paying taxes if I'm here for a couple months, like hanging out with the fam and stuff. So like, that's essentially the gist. Like you can hire people in the United States. I think this is like where you need like an advisor, but yeah, you'd save a boatload of money.